this is the Honor Academy.
I usually like to start kind of with the history of the Honor Academy, where it all started. Ron and Katie were missions fanatics. In fact, when they first got married, they decided to go on a 25-country missions trip to go all over the world because they didn't know where they wanted to serve as missionaries. They just knew that God called them to the missions field. And so they started out in one country and they're like, God, is this where you want us to be? We're sure, so they prayed, they went, and then they went to the next country and they were kind of just going around trying to say, God, where do you want us to be? In the process of going on all these missions trips, because missions were just beating in Ron's heart, this is what God's called me to be, as a missionary. He started to sense this, like, for some strange reason, teenagers in America. God, what are you doing? You called me to be a missionary, and I'm out here on the missions field laying my life down, and you're telling me about these teenagers. They don't need to hear more of the gospel. They already have the gospel. I'm supposed to be a missionary. And yet he kept having this ongoing, like, heartbeat. Wow, what's this? God, what are you saying to me? What are you talking to me about? When he got back from the missions field, he really sensed that maybe God was trying to tell him something about missions and teenagers, and maybe there was something that was supposed to go together there. And so in the summer of 1986, he decided to do a missions trip with teenagers. He took the first group of teenagers to Guatemala. I'm not sure how many were there, but they went out on that very first trip. And they went to Guatemala, and some of these teenagers were 13, 14, 15, 16, all the way up to about 19. They had some leaders on that trip. And they just went on a mission trip. And what was really cool about this was the teenagers on this trip said, man, wow, like I talked to people and I prayed with people and they committed their lives to Christ, and I laid hands on the sick people and they got recovered, and all the stuff that I read about in the scripture. I'm young, but God's using me to change the world. This is pretty cool. It was so cool, in fact, they did it again next year. They went in 1987 on another mission trip to Guatemala. It was awesome. They had fun again. It was great. People were saying that went on these mission trips, man, Ron, God used me to change the world in Guatemala. But I went home to my youth group, and my youth group's like, they're lame. They're not even pursuing God, and they're just telling me to calm down. I'm too radical. And I go to my college, and my college professors are like telling me, listen, you need to calm down, and they're telling me all these things about just like secular humanist type things. They're not telling me, God's truth. They're telling me that I need to calm down, and they're dumping cold water on the dream that you planted, that we could change the world. And Ron, as Ron would put it, he was vexed. That's the word he likes to use. He was like, what do I do? I have all these young people that are getting ready to go into college, yet all of these people in their lives are throwing cold water on their dreams. What do I do? And so he decided to invite 6 people to be a part of a kind of mentorship at his house in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He invited these 6 people. They showed up. And Ron's kind of a preacher, so he decided, all right, I'm just going to get these 6 people in my living room, and they're going to live next door. They're going to come in my house, and all day I'm just going to preach. Preach. Well, any good preacher can preach for a while, but in a couple of days you start running out of content. You're like, oh no, I preached all my sermons, I've said everything I possibly could say. What else is there to say? And that's kind of what happened to Ron. He early on, he's just like, man, I've given it all. What else do I do with these guys? And he started to realize, man, he's planning more missions trips. Things are starting to move in that direction. He's like, all right, hey, could you fax this piece of paper? He'd give it to one of the interns, and they'd be like, yeah, I can fax it. Hey, could you call this pastor here in India? We may try a trip in India. Could you call that pastor? And the person's like, yeah, sure, I'll help. And he started to give assignments to the people that were there at the mentorship. And what was interesting is that's really where the Honor Academy kind of launched. The mentorship in Ron's living room was a nice idea, but it didn't work. What really started to work was by empowering young people to actually go do the work of the ministry. And so as this continued on, Ron started giving all these interns, there's only 6 of them, tasks to do. And as they did the task, at different times at night, they'd have Bible studies. In the morning, they'd get for corporate exercise. And it started to be a thing where you give your life away to go push the gospel out through global expeditions and help young people go on missions trips. And then a couple years later, Acquire the Fire kicked off. It was about getting Acquire the Fire and getting teenagers to come to there.
So this is the call center
for Acquire the Fire.
It was about serving in those capacities, but while I'm serving, I'm also getting trained. I'm getting classes, I'm getting training, and that's really what the Honor Academy is today. And so the interns play a vital role in helping to be the arms and legs of Team Mania, to help advance the cause of Christ at ATFs, where sometimes people make their very first commitment to follow Christ. And then once they commit to follow Christ, we actually move them into ministry. Say, hey, you're 13, you love Jesus, go on a mission trip and tell other people about him. Let's get them plugged in. And so those are kind of the 2 main arms of what Team A does. The internship really sits at the back, and they kind of does both of those things.